Let me try. Wait. This is a very weird setup. Now that I see it, now that I've set it up myself. Yeah. I'm outside, so naturally there's going to be a lot of nothing but background noise. So, I've got my mic. I'm using my phone as a mic. Hopefully this works, ma'am. I'm gonna try. Also, I just woke up an hour ago at max. My hair is all over the place. I'm in my sleep clothes. So yeah, I'm sitting in front of compost. Jesus. Okay, a tiny bit better for me. I've got my tea over here. It's more like a concoction with a few condiments, spices. I have been wanting to make this video for a while now. It's not a vlog, it's not a life update. It's a book update. More specifically, an update on photography. It was part of my reading list in the previous video, and I am almost done with it actually. Only a few pages left, which I'll finish in like a day or two. And it took me a while to get through this book. I just feel like there are some very important things and messages that are very relevant to today that I feel if they're unaddressed by me on a YouTube channel that I started so that I could put videos on it, that would be a waste of what money for one. It's cost a lot. 499 rupees. Insane. Like, sorry, I'm gonna let the metro pass. You can see it very faintly move over here. It happens like every 7 to 10 minutes. I don't know. Yeah. I live where I live, guys. Shut up. Next comes the diction, the register. So I got that this was going to be like a memoir, not just of her life, but her work. And her work, by extension, includes the work of other people as well. People that I don't know, right? Photography is not my niche. So I do not know a lot of references, a lot of movements in photography like surrealism or melancholia, you know. Like, I get what they mean, but when they're projected onto the realm of photography, I have very little reference. And that's the concept of reference brings me to this very paradoxical it is what it is kind of moment, is that a book on photography without pictures. I mean, she cites a lot of work, and I had to have my phone by my side to like Google photos of photographers like Barthes or Cornell and a few other people. But I'm very impressed at how much I've learned about photography and frame and subject and a photographic gaze without pictures. Like, it's truly impressive for her to capture that. And it's such an impassive yet impersonal stance to take when you're making claims about photography and you're just one person, right? So what you say is not a word set in stone, is not the manifesto, but at the same time you say it with or she says it with such confidence and such, how would I say, such depth and certainty that you just believe it as she's saying. You don't try to counter argue or try to debate on it or try to find parallels or anything. You just accept it for what it is. And I think that is very hard to do in books with essays. You know, I just found that, okay, here's a person, she's saying something, I'm going to listen. I'm going to shut up and listen. And that worked brilliantly. Part of why it took me this long to read it, because it can get a little complicated with the terms, and the way she writes is very, very intellectual. It takes a minute, but that's also why I was hooked, right? Because every little thing that she says, the choice of words is so deliberate, I can tell, so consciously picked from her lexicon, and she put what she put, leaving no room for ambiguity, and I love that. It's refreshing. I love it. It's like she couldn't have said anything else because she has said it all. That kind of precision. Amazing. I feel like there should be a change of scenery, a frame change. But let's see if I can move things around. Before I get to a more important part, which is my 2 cents. No, I don't want to downplay it. It is one of the best essays I've written myself. I have my own thoughts and reflections on photography with respect to Susan Sontag, and I want to share them. But I feel like I should move indoors. It is too noisy, I can't hear shit, and I have to charge my devices because this is dying. My laptop's dying. You are fine. My tea's getting cold. A momentary distraction, but look at my potato plant, man. This is the second sprout. It's got 9 sprigs, 9 stalks now. But this first guy, oh my god, it is, I kid you not, it is toddler sized. Okay. Is it better? The acoustics are great. So, after I read about more than half of the book, I sort of thought, why not write something? So I wrote 2 articles, like part 1, part 2. I think it's just a really, really long essay. And I'm gonna read it out. So I'm going to turn my essay into an audio essay, I guess. Sounds fun. The arbitrariness of photographic evidence indicates that reality is fundamentally unclassifiable. Reality is summed up in an array of casual fragments, an endlessly alluring, poignantly reductive way of dealing with the world. These are words from On Photography by Susan Sontag, alluded on several instances in this essay. She has rallied a point most of us know, feel in our gut, yet seem to let go like sand. The general attitude towards lived experiences is that if it isn't documented, it isn't believed in. Proof or it didn't happen. Source. We've all heard of those. We all ask for those, right? We've occupied a posture that demands evidence before it invites excitement. Captions before compassion, summary before glee. It's a little patronizing of the real world, isn't it? What proof have you that you did enjoy your trip to France when you say you did, without, serving photographic little hors d'oeuvre to us? So the premise of this essay, after a stretched thought, has boiled down to an introspective ache of shrinking the big, beautiful world into a rigid, compact, soulless device. And this pandemic of voyeurism is not new to us. We had the surrealist magpies rag-picking quotations from books before they read it. They only plucked its appendage And modern day Twitter or X or Threads, they function the same way, right? Headlines planted like show flowers without a root system that can sustain them. We had art displays and exposés, and now we have museums where people barely stop to truly look at a piece of work, and who mostly just juxtapose their phones and cameras before looking a brushstroke in the eye. We had the daguerreotypes and the flashbulb portraits, relics for the generations to come. And now we have infamy renamed Instagram. A virtual world of pictures photographed to capture moments, stills, movement alike. And yet we question, yet we doubt. So at a time where photographing a carousel of instances from all around us, the real world as we call it, is reality enough? Are people images or images people? Is this the penultimate stage of metamorphosis where the camera becomes the maker? The implication behind it being, is our mediation of the world itself? That it must be ontologically there, but is it real enough to live in? Being semi-Sontag in here, but modern day photography is aggressive, participative, and impatient. And our society, the victim to a malaise that keeps us from living it without the condition of documenting it, possessing it, right? Think about it. We rush to reshare headlines, quoting without reading, consuming without absorbing what is said, saving once and then never revisiting. It is rather morbid to call them Instagram posts when they are flat, fragmented shards of a half-lived life. Aesthetics without encounter. And we look at the world with a gaze so anthropocentric, forgetting momentarily that we share it with others. We're not in a speciesism as much as we think so. Not meant to be spectators, and even then, what we consider the subject of our frame, artwork, nature, people, suffering, must pass through us, through our lens, verified and qualified before we validate it. Which is why Instagram, once a montage of candor and happenstance, if you remember beta Instagram, the blue-colored one, where all you could do was just share pictures, now seems like a factory overproducing clips and cutouts of pictures, very rarely for one's own amusement and joy, and more for distraction, push and shove on an algorithm, chasing victory and immortality through image, only to be lathered with another picture, then another, then one more, until what once shared with intention is lost in a sea of twin debris. Quite an entropy. I'm wary, asking if reality is enough that we can just live and not reach for our phones at first glance. Where is our faith in unwitnessed existence? Isn't life more miraculous and magical when we stop trying to capture it? I wanted desperately to vlog my trip to France this summer. It's the first time I'm visiting France. I was staying in Versailles. The chateau was like a 20-minute walk away from me. I took the train, the RERC, and the metro to Paris every day for a week. And I wanted to vlog it because it's aesthetic. It's great photo for YouTube. I wanted to make a, June in Paris or summer in Paris vlog. And somewhere between walking on cobbled pavements under yellow light and standing before the very real monuments we only see through pictures, ironically, I put my phone down. What do we lose when we take a photograph? What the photograph reproduces to infinity has occurred only once. The photograph mechanically repeats what could never be repeated existentially. It's from Camera Lucida by Barthes, Roland Barthes, 1980. Think the toothy yawn of a Bengal tiger, right? Captured by a wildlife photographer, a product of a wait hours long. That same tiger may never yawn the same way again. So that photograph becomes a vivid antique of a unique moment past. And we will applaud it, share it, and later never think of it. Why not watch the tiger itself? A creature so magnificent, so royal, its instinct on display for us. How could we ever forget? How could we look away? What use is the imprisonment of a real moment if it is never to be relived? And could we confront this amnesia, please? By that I mean, if you look at it, take the notion of a concert, for example. You are surrounded by enthusiasm, by music, by cheer, by happiness, and it feels so overwhelming that the moment you leave the stadium or the arena, you forget. You go into this temporary amnesia, as if we weren't witness to reality. You know, maybe we can never remember these moments because the photographs remember them for us. Another evocative argument I can present is akin to the triadic model of semiotics by Barthes, 1860, right? Where linguistically words are nonsense, right? They're just air and vibrations with a form and eventually a meaning. Yet we employ them every day. You know, you have the representamen, the object, the interpretant. Or in Saussure's model, the sign, signifier, signified, with a reference in the real world, you know, an entity that exists, which is where the meaning comes from mostly. You know, a cat is not a cat because of the alphabet C, A, and T. A cat is a cat because it's a cat. We just call it that. So we can say that the photo carries its reference within itself, forever, arbitrary in nature, but its meaning and significance comes from us as photographer or spectator, precisely because of the world and context that surrounds it. Take, for instance, this yellowed, sepia-dipped photo of my great-grandparents. Pretty cool, right? I have never met them, naturally. You know, I have never heard their voices. I do not know their life, of their pain and pleasures. I know but their children and four children, right? My grandparents, my parents. And yet, I understand that my face is a confluence of their faces, of their birthmarks and scars, of their bodies. I do not know them as reference, yet I smile because I can envision the context, find nostalgia in the arbitrariness, comfort in the unknown and unreachable. The sign and the referent collapse into one another. The person in the photograph was, and now only is, in this suspended symbolic form. So in relation, is a photograph complete once it's captured? Or is it complete because you are the interpreter and inheritor of its referent? It is a metaphysical closure that everything perishable can be entrapped in a singular photograph and can live lives wearing skins nuanced by each individual viewer. How facile has it become to consume photographs as pure observation and not the philosophy of life itself? You know, you open Instagram or Pinterest and you scroll through essentially an infinite realm of pictures, and you stop less, you like faster, and by the time you reach your fourth or sixth picture, you forget the first one. As minimalist as this argument on momentum sounds, its potency lies in the distilled empiricism that the modern day spectator simply does not react with or interact with reality enough, and at best, in an attempt to relate to the world, it forgets to accept it as it is. I cannot describe it better than Sontag herself. Life is not about significant details illuminated by a flash fixed forever. Photographs are. albeit a fuzzy demarcation, it does separate life and photography. They can coexist, co-index, but they cannot morph into one. It is truly surreal that a sunset in Santorini, a genocide in Sudan, and a cat meme all occupy the same scroll space. And yet they cannot replace their real tangible reference. And this aphoristic diversity is also the reason for the rising desensitization amongst consumers of the internet. Internautes, as I like to call them, like astronauts, but people who surf the internet. So internaute, it's a French term. Like, we see so much that we stop seeing anything at all. And the earmark of platforms like Instagram is that it hosts an ecosystem of simulacrum so vast that one ends up having the same reaction to a picture of a happy couple kissing under starlight, to a lush green duvet on the countryside, to a sick poor child with tears in its eyes, right? And the same like button for all three pictures. A little problematic, don't you think? When all emotions share the same interface, empathy becomes a very reluctant performance, and apathy a side effect of scrolling. So to what extent does a photograph remain meaningful, important, relevant? As we question photography of reality, its sister inquiry also arises: what about the reality of photographs? In a sense, Sontag argues that photography is more than just a replica of still life, that there is a flavor of truth-telling imbued in it. Like, what do we tell when we take a picture, right? Naturally, one would assume the blatant, undeniable truth, for we have captured it in a frame where it cannot escape. This person exists. There is no denying that, because it's entrapped in a picture. Even for images that are propaganda, right? It still is a fabricated truth. One feels what is intended. One feels the truth, right? Seeing is believing, we've heard that, but is it really? Light rays touching the film screen, the process that traditionally lets a photograph claim its truth, that the picture wouldn't exist without the thing being there. So I would immediately bring up John Berger's Ways of Seeing. Masterful book. My God, it's insane. It's got a very, very niche print and pictures. A book on photography, painting with pictures. It's filled with pictures, but I don't want to hijack this video because I will reread this. I will give it a proper read and some annotations, and I will make another video on this. But John Berger argues that every image is a byproduct of the politics of the gaze. So what is included, discarded, illuminated, cropped, restricted to periphery, or captioned changes the entire truth value of a photograph. Hear me out. So while photography feels objective, it is always a product of intention. So, can a photograph lie? Shooting an unsure shot here, but let's take formal semantics and fuse it with visual semiotics. Okay, treating the photograph as a proposition that can be evaluated for truth in a world that constantly updates. A proposition is beyond linguistics. It is but the concept devoid of grammar of an occurrence, an existence. And a proposition can be true or false, which we can figure it in a table. What a table? A truth table shows how the truth or falsity of a compound statement depends on the truth or falsity of the simple statements from which it is constructed. So, take this photograph, for instance, right? It can be represented by propositions P, Q, and like a sentence, it can be true or false relative to a world W. So, P, it is snowing. Q, the subject stands in the center. These are my two simple propositions. When you fuse them, it creates a compound proposition that it's snowing and there's the subject at the center, which is what the photograph is. So within the possible world of the photograph, let's call it W1, both are true. But in the real world, W0, neither may hold, in the sense that the subject may well be in the side, in the corner, or the turn of a road or maybe something, and therefore not in the center. It may not be snow, but dust, cotton, Christmas decorations. Maybe it stopped snowing immediately after the photograph was taken. So the truth conditions of a photograph depend on the world of reference we assign it. So this leads to a fascinating conclusion that photographs have local truth, not universal truth, and are temporally and contextually anchored truth functions. You can ask, till how long? How much? Relative to what? These are, in effect, questions of aspectuality and persistence conditions. Same issue semantics faces with stative versus dynamic predicates events, right? So it is snowing is true at the moment of capture, but false seconds later. There is a subject in the center is only true relative to the frame of reference, a purely compositional truth. So, apologies for the semantic algebra that I put in an essay. In logical terms, it's hilarious, but hear me out. So T is the time of exposure, right? So the proposition P exists in the world W at a time T, and is true if and only if it is snowing in the same world W and at the same time T. But for any T that isn't T, the truth value may shift to 0. So for any T that isn't the time of exposure, time of capture, the truth value is 0. Hence, photography becomes like a frozen truth function, a snapshot of a world where the proposition P held once. And if figure and ground is how a photographer frames the world, is the ground true? Is the figure? So figure and ground are terms introduced by Talmy, 1972, to refer to respectively the located and to the locating entity. Like, this is the ground, I'm the figure. If I place this is the figure, I'm the ground. We're always looking at objects with respect to other things or relative to their backgrounds. If we extend the metaphor, the figure, subject, is the focus, like the topic or foregrounded proposition. And the ground, context, provides the presupposed background truth. But the act of framing already manipulates both, right? The photographer's crop functions like a truth conditional operator, delimiting which worlds are accessible to the viewer. So what is captured is not the truth of the world, but just a model of it. A possible world WP1, world W in which proposition P is true, 1 being the truth value, true. And it's constructed by the photographer's choices. In formal semantics, truth is binary, logical. In photography, it becomes gradated and phenomenological. And if language encodes propositions that can be tested for truth, then photography encodes impressions that can only be believed in. So, it may not be that proposition P is true or false, but like it would be for a sentence, but that proposition P was once true somewhere at a particular time. Algebraically, figuratively, no, equationally, a photograph phi is true in W if and only if some t such that p open bracket W comma t small w small t bracket close equals 1. Sorry. In layman's terms, a photograph is true in a world W if and only if there exists a time t such that the proposition p it depicts is true in a world W and at a time t. You can choose to ignore. You can even choose to end the video here. I won't blame you. But a photograph, then, is a temporal proof of a proposition that the world has already falsified. Thus, photography tells a truth about time, but not about reality as lived. It freezes a moment, but divorces it from the continuum of context. So can a photograph lie? The modern academic answer would be, it already does, by being one. Especially today, with AI-assisted filters, generative fills, deepfakes, like I articulate a Barthesian groan, a sob of disgust as I write this, like So all of these have eroded the indexical link, pointy link, between image and referent. So even a real photograph now lives in a culture of simulation where its truth is determined not by what it depicts, but by how it circulates and it's consumed. So Roland Barthes would weep, first of all. The punctuum, the emotional wound of a photograph, cannot exist when its referent was never real. It should shock you. It shocks me, and it grates against my mind like an agitating alliteration. Is reality not enough for us anymore? Generativity, right, once an explosion of limitless creativity and possibilities, is now the world's most popular, underrated moral, ethical, and environmental dilemma. We're aware of this manifesto. And what was once relevant to grammar, more precisely the paradigm and the syntagma, right, has now seeped into the one thing that we have been protecting, preserving throughout history: art. Art has always survived calamities, revolutions, crises, generations. Art has made us think. But what happens when art stops making us think because the thinking itself is delegated? Metacognition, right? The very ability to step back and know that we're thinking. The awareness of one's awareness. It begins to dull. We outsource taste, memory, even wonder. Cognitive functions that distinguish humans from animals, from machines, especially machines. And yet look at the irony, the epistemic endangerment, right? We have people feeding prompts and half-baked ideas, which could very well serve as the onset of creativity, crude, but there. They feed it to an algorithm that absorbs it, and instead of truly generating its outcome, right, invades into a surveillance network, a farm of artwork and writing, sets sail into waters by artists and writers, a product of their cognitive functions intact, and it plucks what's suitable like a trespasser does flowers from a garden you water, and presents you an assembled fiend, a supposedly renewed art devoid of a soul. The tragedy is not that machines can now think for us and imagine for us, but that we no longer notice when they do. It's a quote from Nicholas Carr's book, Automation and Us. So if Sontag says photographs anesthetize, then I say AI amputates. Photographs over time dull us and desensitize us from reality. We see that when we look at a lot of pictures of dead people, and eventually we just stop feeling like, okay, great, one more dead body, let's crawl, that. But AI cuts us from relation entirely. Like, we cease to belong to the world W0 or W1 even of that photograph. And that is why we feel that unease, that split-second certainty that when we diagnose a photo as AI generated, because we know deep down that the proposed world WP1 is not real. And we aren't in it. Even before the distorted fingers and the spots and polished ceramic skin, we know. It reminds me instantly of another book, the opening chapter of Malcolm Gladwell's Blink, where the statue of Okuros is like celebrated in the museum, but it just doesn't look right to a very few, right? Not through carbon dating or like a compositional analysis, but through what one of them called intuitive repulsion. Their eyes and minds could not immediately articulate why, but something felt off. Sound familiar? When did we go from just analog reproduction of photographs to generative simulation? What disease is this, and why are we willingly sick? We are losing not just our sense of the real, but our instinct for it. And one day, photography of the real is not going to be real enough, and reality will starve. Because we'd be feasting on, or too distracted by the simulated world, tangibly decaying in the real one, asking for a third counterfeit world to clean up or to make up for the mess of the first two. What the fuck? What the fuck? Like, photographs, some would argue, are meant to be simple. Even their analysis and interpretation don't need to be that deep so high. I know, I get it. Fair enough, it needn't be. But the fact that it is that deep means we have the ability to vivisect simplicity down to its bare thumb and wisen up against truth so that we can recognize it before it's manipulated. I feel like a conspiracy theorist. With reason, though. Like, I mean, I strongly feel anyone interested in photography, in reality, in life around us, in visual politics. Shout out to RK, who's writing a thesis on it, I think. I hope she hasn't changed her topic. Anyone interested in photography, art history, paintings, should read it. It is a great read. I still haven't finished. But yeah, I also kind of felt happy making another video, and surprisingly the house is very quiet today.